I guess that will do it. Carol, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Hi.
Hi, I can't I went to turn off my music and now I see you, but I don't see anything else. I gotta see if I can open this somehow.
That's all you need.
Oh, and Facebook is broken.
Oh, all right. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Breakfast Club. Today is Tuesday, November 20th. Very excited to be here with you. I know this has quickly become one of the highlights of both Carol and I's week, just being able to hang out with you guys and answer some pretty great questions as we go through everything. So, Carol, I know we have a special announcement today.
Yes.
Bringing in our third co-host. So every week you're going to get three real good industry experts in so many different levels. So Carol, can you introduce our special guest? Is she here?
Is she with us?
Biewer, anyone? Biewer, is she here?
Maybe I better call her.
She's probably, let's see. I don't see her name.
She might be trying to figure out how to get in.
Oh, yeah, she's on. She's on. All right.
Yes. Oh!
She's muted.
Hi, Laura. Where are you?
Laura, if you're looking to find out how to unmute yourself, it's in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom window.
And we'd like to see you if you don't mind too.
Definitely.
So both of those, you just unlock them.
As she's figuring that out, Carol, why don't you introduce her?
Well, I will. We are adding another host, a co-host to this Tuesday morning thing that we're doing. And I'm very excited. There she is. Laura Biewer, who a lot of you already know. We met at the symposium last week. And I've known Laura for a very long time. She is an expert at so many things, but her real niche is notary law. And she does a lot of teaching. She has courses that she's teaching people to do all kinds of things, international documents, adoptions, trusts. And I'll let her to say hello and tell you a little bit about what she does.
Thanks, Carol. First of all, thank you so much for letting me join in today. I really appreciate that opportunity. I have been working with notaries for over 12 years, teaching mandated training classes in California. Also, I'm behind the scenes. I do a little hotline work for the NNA, and I'm a conference speaker. So I've had a lot of different experiences, but all of them related to being a notary. So I'm really excited to have a forum, a chance to be able to share some of that so others can also have that success and do some new things and liven up their business. So thanks for inviting me to be with you today.
Well, we're really excited for Bill and I both, because I think the three of us, we're going to be able to answer just about anything that they throw at us.
I hope so.
Yeah, Laura, it's absolutely a pleasure to be here. But you know what I love about what we've got going on here is that we're tapping into like-minded people who want to share their knowledge and their expertise for the betterment of other people. And I know sometimes, especially for new notaries who are just starting out, it feels like nobody wants to share information and get things. So the fact that we're all coming together to do this is really powerful and really kind of a beautiful thing. So I really appreciate you wanting to be a part of this. So thank you. So why don't we jump in? We've got a lot of great questions as we get started. I know, Carol, I've got a few from you, and I just remembered that I'm not sure if I got all of yours updated. So if we want to integrate some of those from your pool as well, we certainly can. The first one, I think, oops, hold on one second. Let me get this shared here so everybody can see. Okay, so the first question is kind of a long one, and I thought this was interesting because I've never had this before. Do you know of anyone who has experienced with ransomware attacks on their notary business? I had an email show up in my spam folder of my business email stating that my business email account had been hacked And they mentioned all these other nasties, and they're going to do unless I send them $800 in Bitcoin to a specific account. I have not done anything with those emails other than change passwords and strengthen the spyware programs on my laptop. None of the threats that they made have been acted on. So other than what I have already done, do you have any suggestions, or could you suggest a course of action to take? Their email suggests that they have infected my software system or my system software.
I've had this twice this last week.
No kidding.
Yes, and I actually I posted something the first time it happened to me. I put it on Facebook. I was horrified because what they do is they say, we've put malware into your system. We know your password, and they did come up with a password that I used to use, and that they've been going through my camera. They've been watching me get onto porn, and I mean the letters are absolutely disgusting. And they say they've got all of my contacts off of my email, and they're going to send this out, and they want payment in Bitcoin. The first one, they wanted something like $5,000 in this Bitcoin thing with explicit instructions on to how I was supposed to do it. Well, obviously, I'm not really into porn for one thing, but I got out there. I just put it out because I think people should know this. I didn't do a darn thing about it. You know, these things are so hard to catch. Like the phony people that are selling phony courses and stuff. I've been to the FBI, I've been to the Department of Justice, I've been to so many places. There's nothing they can do about it. So you know what? I just erase it. Nothing ever happens. They don't know what they're doing.
Well, and so that's the thing. A lot of these are kind of like the scams, like from the Prince of Nigeria, who he has $60 million and he just needs to hide in the U.S. while his country goes. They're going to pay you $6 million. Hey guys, I got to mute everybody. I'm sorry, we got a lot of background noise again here. Let me just mute everybody. That's going to be you too, Carol. So you'll have to unmute. So what they're doing a lot of times is they're just like throwing spaghetti on the wall, and they're just hoping that somebody is terrified enough to pay them. But that's not to say that these types of scams don't exist, because they do. But there are software people out there who can hack systems and can hijack. What you'll find though is the skill set behind that is usually not looking at individual notaries and their porn emails. You know, they're going for major companies whose operations come to a halt if their computers don't work, and then they get a lot more money. So that would be a much better use of their resources. So a lot of these are just little scams. And if you're not on the internet looking at porn, then you're probably going to be okay, because you know they don't really have access to anything. Laura, do you have any insight on that?
You know, I wish I did, because I do worry about that myself. And the first things that they said they did would be what I would have done, which is change passwords, strengthen, you know, the spyware software. And I think what you say is really important to recognize too. If you don't go to unsafe sites, you know, in the first place, then you're probably not going to have an issue. And this might have been one of those copycat scares. That was one of the scams going around, that they really could do those things. But somebody else may have just taken advantage, and they're sending out the email, even though they don't have the wherewithal to actually execute anything they're saying to see if you'll bite.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, thank you. And I think this sparks a really good conversation. So I really appreciate the person who sent this in. She asked that I not use your name, but I think I would like to dig a little deeper in this. I would like to get a software security expert that we can share some additional protections for you. So thank you for that. All right, next question. Oops, let's see. Next question, maybe. There we go. We're skipping that one because we talked about that last week. Sorry. What do you consider the advantages of an NNA membership, and is it valuable to renew annually? Laura, do you mind if we start with you on that one?
Gosh, I wonder why you wanted to start with me. Well, okay, so here's the deal. I think that the NNA does provide some great attributes in their membership. However, I will say this. When you buy a package of supplies. And many people who go through their mandated training do buy a package of supplies. Part of that package includes all 4 years of their commission to have hotline. And that is also in the membership. So the biggest benefit, which is hotline, can be obtained actually through just purchasing your supplies. And then you would not need to have that membership. There are other benefits to the membership. However, I think when we're looking to how we budget and spend our money, we need to do that wisely. And we need to be able to have some for other things like marketing and listings and other things that move our business forward. So if the reason you're looking for membership is hotline, you can already get it another way when you're already buying your supplies anyways. And that would be my recommendation, and to hold back actually on the membership unless you're looking for some other things specifically that they can offer.
That's amazing to know, Laura. Thank you. I did not realize that myself. So I think one of the greatest benefits of the NNA membership was the hotline. They are amazing resources, especially when you're working with general notary work and you just have a question about how things can get done. They have been such a help to me and to so many others. And they have, obviously, they're advocates for you. They have the convention. There's so many other benefits included. My biggest hesitation for new notaries especially is exactly what you mentioned, Laura, is the budget. If it's in your budget to pay for a membership, then it does have its privileges, of course, but it's not going to be the determining factor of your success in this business. When I first started out, I say this a lot, I was like a bull in a china shop. I did not know anything, and I didn't even know the NNA existed. And I still did all right for myself. So you can do okay without it. It just depends, just like Laura said, on your what you need and what you hope to get out of it. And like this and so many other training courses or subscription services, I always say, never sign up for anything that is just designed to get you more business. There's growth, there's education, there's all kinds of, there's networking, all of that stuff is all great and it will help you eventually, but you're not going to get a membership and suddenly get so much business that you can't handle, you know. Carol, you have an opinion on that? Sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, someone just mentioned something that I have found that's true. I've kind of have my battles with the NNA, which Laura is very much aware of. I think that for years they've done a wonderful job with Notaries Public. I'm not sure so much with the notary signing agents, and I have people who I mentor my piece just like you do, and Laura does. We mentor our students on a real regular basis, and what I hear is sometimes they'll say, well, I called the NNA and I talked to 2 different people or 3 different people, and they all gave me a different answer. And they'll come. And I don't know if you have both heard that, and I know that if I were guaranteed that I would get Laura on the hotline, then that would make me a happy camper. But some of the people, they have certain opinions, and I don't think they're right, and they give people some misinformation. So I think to rely on that to run your business is a little bit dangerous. You need to do a lot of your own homework.
Absolutely. And that, you know, I think one of the biggest challenges the NNA has is to be that big of a resource to so many people in so many states. I mean, it's almost an impossible challenge. So again, we have to rely on ourselves to take on the responsibility to be the experts in our own state and just get different perspectives as we go along. And
I think you just hit it, because they are so large and they have such a huge membership. Laura and I were just talking about this the other day. There are things they cannot do. It's a physical impossibility that they could do the things that we're able to do, because we have such a small family of students, and we can spread ourselves to everyone and give what they need. But when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of members, and it's pretty difficult.
Challenge. All right. Let's see. Oh, we did this one last week with the attorney states, so we'll skip that one. All right, this was a great question, I thought. I wonder what additional car insurance everyone purchases for their business vehicles, since it's being used for signing business and driving a lot. exposed to more everyday liability. I personally have not added any insurance, just curious to know. What do you think, Laura?
I did talk to my insurance agent about that. And the defining factor for us was that I don't drive anybody else for my business. Nobody's in my car but me, driving around town just as anybody else would be driving around town. And so we determined I did not need any extra insurance or commercial insurance because, again, I wasn't transporting anybody.
Excellent. Carol, have you had any experience with that?
Same, exactly what Laura just said. We didn't have any need for it. I never transported people. I've always made sure that we had high liability, all the coverage
Right.
that we needed, and I was always secure with it. So
that's very similar for me. So, I know you guys are based in California. I'm in Arizona. I never transport other people in my vehicle, so I didn't have to worry about it. But what happens when you start increasing your assets is you have more assets that would be at risk. So what I did is I increased my liability coverage. So if anything were to happen, I would have a little additional coverage. But then also what happened is my mileage went up. So when my mileage started going up ridiculously, that's what did impact my my rates a little bit. Not where I'm like triple my policy or even double my policy or anything, but I have more mileage, so I'm clearly on the road more. So technically, I'm at a higher risk. So I paid a little more that way. Another factor that my uncle taught me was that he holds his vehicles in individual LLCs for that very same purpose. Again, guys, that's kind of next level stuff. But if anything were to happen with a vehicle that's held in a single LLC, it just limits the liability on that particular vehicle. So that's something to consider as well. But of course, we're not lawyers or tax people or insurance agents, so definitely get some advice on your own. All right, next. Do we need to do something with our E&O to be a signing service? When getting a last minute signing from an escrow officer, how do we communicate that we need to send someone else out if we have another appointment? Great question. There's a few different ways to look at this. Laura, do you have some input on this one?
Well, I'm hearing or seeing two different questions happening here. The first one is about the E&O, and I'm going to defer that to you guys because I'm not a signing service, so I don't really have any background in that information. The second half of the question about communicating there's a need to send somebody else because we have another appointment, I'm not sure if they're saying, look, you're calling to schedule me, but I'm not available, or I took the appointment and then it turns out that I'm not available. In the first scenario, I'm always prepared with a list of other notaries who are also certified like I am. So when I'm not available, I say, look, I've got other notaries, same area. Would you like one? A lot of times what they'll ask me is, who is it? And they'll look at their list. And if they're on their list, they'll say, oh yeah, I see her on the list. Let me call her next. Or if they're not on the list, they will take their name and number. And that's one of the ways I can share my work. Now, if the question is, I took the job, and now it turns out I'm not able to take the job, as soon as I'm aware of that, I call. I will tell you, in 15 years, I've only done that twice, where I've taken an appointment and then I had to, and both times my son was hospitalized. So I'm very committed. Once I accept, even if I decide this wasn't a great job to take or I could have had a better job, I don't mess around with my jobs. Once I take them, it's my responsibility to see them through unless there's some kind of extenuating circumstance. So I'm not quite sure which one of those they were trying to address. So that would be my input on that.
Excellent. And I spoke with her. So it was the first scenario where she's already booked and can't take the appointment. But in this particular case, it was her very first opportunity to work with this escrow officer. So of course it was a time where she just wasn't sure if she could just refer that to somebody or defer it to somebody who's technically on her team or something like that. So, Carol, if you don't mind, I'll jump in on how my experience on this. When it comes to starting a signing service, there's various levels of depth you can go with it, and what you can kind of cater your message to. I guess I'm hungry. Your strategy to your customer. Some title companies, and most of the ones that I work with, are very relaxed when it came to starting a signing service. They didn't have a whole lot of requirements to start building a team underneath them and farming those signings out. Some of them, on the other hand, are extremely intense, where they require business license, last 2 years financials audited by an independent third company, $5 million in E&O insurance. They have all these different requirements. So when you're first starting out, though, that's a huge chunk to bite out of. Most of us are just kind of easing into it, and we're building a relationship with one particular escrow officer or one particular office, and it grows and it eventually morphs. And that's really how mine started too. They wanted to work with me. They worked with me. Suddenly, there was too much business, so I had to start recruiting people, and I said, hey, I can do this now here in the city, and eventually it was in every state. And I just, their corporate office or somebody would say, all right, well, we need to see an increase in your E&O coverage with an umbrella to cover this, whether it's $1 million. Sometimes it was only 500,000. It just depends. Just depends on your client. Carol, do you have anything on that one?
Only that a lot of my students, once they get busy, they think that they're really well, and they think about starting a signing service. And the only advice I give them is, if this is something that they really want to do, it better have a lot of capital to back them up, because that's death for signing services. And we know that, we've all experienced it. Once a signing service doesn't have the capital to pay their notaries for whatever reason, that's it. That's the end of them. Nobody's going to work with them, and they end up going down. I think I like the idea way more that title companies are requiring signing services to be accountable. I think they should have business licenses. I think they should have a lot of money and insurance to back them up. Unfortunately, it's the one thing that's not regulated at all in this industry. And it causes a lot of heartache for people when they don't get paid.
So when you're thinking out, if you're listening to this, you're thinking, well, I would never do that. I would never not pay someone. But the reality is, you can't pay people until you get paid. And if you don't get paid in a timely manner, it really jams things up. When I look back at look at my business, that's the most stressful component, is the scheduling and making sure everybody gets paid on time. Because sometimes these corporate clients, they got billions of dollars, but they're going to pay you when they pay you. And it might be 20 days, and it might be 45 days. So it's tough to manage for sure.
Well, I have a sample of a gal that has been in business for years, had a 5-star signing service, great to work with. And she, last year, had a title company that bailed on her $45,000. It's a lot of money for anybody, $45,000. And she couldn't pay her notaries. And she played the game, trying to do it, trying to catch up. And she's still in business, but it almost destroyed her completely. Yeah. And she was top of her game.
That's rough. That's a hit out of nowhere for sure. The other thing I want to talk about, though, is the referral aspect. Again, that Laurel, now I'm just naming you whatever. Laura and Carol both talk about a lot, and we talk about it too, is even if you're not a signing service, even if you don't want to go through that, and you don't want to build a team underneath you and deal with any of that, you can still be a one-stop shop for your clients. You can still be that resource. There's still, if they can call you, and if you're not available, they know that you've got a list of 10 people that can help them. You are still going to be of that value to the client. That's what they're looking for. They just, when you look at signingagent.com, or you get on Notary Rotary and you look to find a notary, it's so hard to pick out one that is like-minded and of quality and is going to work with you, not against you. So when you can personally refer somebody, it has a lot of value to signing company owners, schedulers, and escrow officers.
That's why networking is important.
So
that's what we did in Phoenix when we were living there. We had the 5 top notaries And we talked, we met, we were on the phone, and people knew if we couldn't do something, we had somebody well qualified to step in.
Yeah,
And it was a
guys,
really wonderful, friendly arrangement.
it makes all the difference. And remember what, Laura, actually, this was you when we did a interview with you a few weeks ago. We talked about how other notaries in your area are not your competition, they're your colleagues. And there are notary meetups. I'm going to Florida in a couple weeks, and we're doing a notary meetup in like 6 different cities. They're all over. Some cities have standing meetups all the time. Those are awesome opportunities for you to get together with people, number one, that you can talk about your business with, because your family's probably sick of hearing it. And number two, you can meet other people that can help support you in this. You can become that resource for your customers. All right, moving right along. I'd like to know your and Carol's opinions of what the slow times of the year are with regard to loan signings, so that I may better prepare my time management and like vacation. Well,
We're in it.
traditionally, this would be it. The last couple of years, though, have really skewed that a little bit because of the booming housing market.
Yeah.
But what you're finding, and it can vary literally from client to client, because typically the end of the year, it's the fourth quarter, that is going to be a little busier, that period between Christmas and New Year's. But some companies have a different fiscal year, so it ends differently. Like for me, I have a lot of builder clients, so September was absolutely insane. They were jamming so many signings into September because they had to meet certain goals for their stockholders. So that was crazy. And then it kind of, October just kind of deflated. So it was kind of nice to be able to recover. But depending on the company's fiscal year will have a big impact on that. But technically this would be the slow season right now, November. The busiest times, guys, especially for new home purchases, is summer. That actually kind of surprised me, but with families moving and buying homes, June, July, August, super busy.
Get the kids in school.
That's, that's exactly right, Carol. What you said is it's tied to the school season. But what I want to say is I don't really have a slow season. And the reason is that I'm not tied to the volatility of that market. And because I do other kinds of work, I have a kind of smoothed out that seasonal list of doing mobile work. And so you might want to consider, if there are slow periods with a particular specialty that I handle, then what are other things I do that are not impacted by the same thing? And then I'd have that going underneath so that it carries me through when there are other slow times.
I love that. That's huge. The diversification of your portfolio of services is going to mean so much with general notary work, specializations, reverse mortgage, whatever it might be. Now, guys, if you don't mind, I got Judy Coltree. She has to go, but she wants to ask a question before she leaves, if that's all right with you, Judy.
She's always here, so please.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Judy. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks, guys. Listen, I did a closing the other night, and everything went through. I hadn't heard anything. I got an email today saying that there was an error on the DOT and that it needed to be re-signed with the date 11/12/18. I went ahead and I called him and I said, okay, I don't have that document anymore. He says, well, respond to that email and I will send it to you. I said, is it an error that I made? And he says, oh no. He said, it was something about the verbiage in the DOT. And I said, am I allowed to actually post date or go back and that date? He said, if you were the original signer, then you can sign that date. He said, now if we had to bring somebody else in, then they would have to use a different date. But I just did not feel comfortable with that answer. And I knew that I would have the most intelligent agents online right now. So I needed to get a clarification on that. And if I do that, I still have to do another entry into my journal. Do I put today's date or do I go back under the original one and say revised DOT signed on this date.
I think Laura should take this.
Yeah, I would love to hear Laura's perspective on this.
I'd love to give you one, but I could not hear the first half of the question, and I don't know the state.
Tennessee.
Okay, Tennessee. And I did not hear the document what the problem was. I only heard the back end.
Okay. It was a signing, and it was, I got a message today saying that there was an error in the verbiage on the DOT.
Okay.
You know, we signed everything correctly, but there was some verbiage that had to be changed. And he wants me to go back, contact the signer, and go back and have her re-sign using the date 11/12/18.
Right. So here would be my response to that. I'd consider that backdating. It's a new document because it's been revised itself. You're meeting with them a second time in person, and you're filling out a new notary certificate to go with that. So that's all another notarization, and you should have a separate record of that with the date you appeared in front of them in the journal and on that certificate.
Right. Okay. So I will just send, I did not feel comfortable with that, and I knew y'all were going to be on, and I said, okay, I've got them cornered. They're going to have to answer my question.
The fact that the document was revised is a major factor in that, because it's basically a new document.
Okay.
Carol, any additional insight on that?
No, you're absolutely right on. Because of the fact that the document was changed,
Exactly.
it makes it a whole new document. And if she does anything other than what she's supposed to do, which is to date it current, she's breaking the law as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I felt the same way. Okay.
Perfect. All right. Awesome question. Thanks, Judy. All right. Next question. Do you recommend getting a spare notary seal, and how often do you usually need to replace the notary seal?
They have to listen to their state's rules and regulations. Some states will not allow you to have more than one seal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to mute everybody because I can hear a dog, but just unmute yourselves, guys. Sorry. There we go. I'll go ahead and unmute you guys. Laura, for some reason, I cannot unmute you. So there you go. All right. Awesome.
Am I there?
Yeah.
Carol had a great answer, which is the one I would have given, which is every state has different laws about how many seals you can have. If you happen to be in California, we can have as many as we want, and therefore I have 4. I don't just have one spare. I have different sizes, different shapes, and I have an embosser. And it's because my business is so diversified, I have need for different ones. And of course, if one broke, I have a replacement to keep going. Because in California, I am required to have the seal in order to complete the notarization. And if I only have one seal, and it's the only one I have, and it breaks in the middle of a signing, I'm done. So I do recommend it. My seals last me all 4 years, and not trying to plug the NNA, but mine do come from there, and they're warranted for the entire 4 years. So if it breaks during my commission, they will repair or replace the seal.
Wonderful.
Can I interject something, because this kind of fits in, and I wanted to talk about it last week. I'll make it pretty quick, but one of my students had her stamp stolen, and it was just awful. She's got a letter about it, and I just wanted to talk about what she did to protect herself. I think this is great.
Yeah, perfect.
So she was talking about how when she found out it happened, she was in shock. She had never had her seal stolen or lost, but somebody did it, and it was a fraudulent document. And what she did, the bottom line of this is just genius. She started every year to get a new seal, different shapes. So maybe one year it would be square, and the next year it would be round. And what happened is it took so long for that fraud to show up that she can now go back and say, no, in that year I was using a round one, or I was using this one or that one, and to prove that it wasn't her, that it was a fraudulent situation. My husband we had a situation one time where somebody used his seal supposedly on a grant deed, and it was an ongoing investigation, and we knew it wasn't him. And apparently they had gotten a copy of it and somehow copied it and tried to look like a signature. And it's a scary thing when that happens. So I thought her answer to this was just brilliant, to get a different seal every year. And that way, when those things do show up, she can say, "That wasn't me. This is the seal I was using this year."
Yeah, just an extra level of security there.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, I think you both are great. Awesome. Thanks. Laura, I think that's you too now. I really appreciate how you care and are trying to help notaries. I just have a couple of questions. Why do some loan packets have the deed of trust cover page hiding in the middle of the package, nowhere near the rest of the deed of trust? Are they not concerned about the initials being missed on this lonely, isolated page? And then the follow-up question, why do some deed of trust require initials and while others do not? Well,
Wow, I'd have a quick answer,
yeah.
Bill. And my quick answer is, mine is not to question why. I'm an NSA, and whatever the purpose is behind how they organize the order of the documents, it's just not my place to say, hey, why don't you put it this way? Why don't you do it that way? It's easier for me. My job is to take care of the package that's provided to me and do the best job I can to give it back to them the way they gave it to me and execute it correctly. It's certainly interesting to know the why, and if you or Carol know the why, that's fabulous. But whenever I see a why question, I always think, okay, that's interesting, but not important. What's important is that I do the job.
Well, I can tell you why not. Because the one thing, if I could wave my magic wand, the one thing I would ask would be that we would have uniform documents in this country. Oh my gosh. There's so many lenders and every package you get is different. You can't ever count on anything being the same. Why can't we do that? So you're right, Laura. We have to just adapt and just do the best we can with whatever they send to us. I just don't understand why we can't have uniform documents.
That's a really good point. And here's the thing. It's not just the lenders. It's the escrow officers. It's the escrow company. And sometimes it's even the escrow assistant. They all have their own ways of doing things. And when it comes to cover sheets, I don't know if you're just talking about page one on that or like the title company's cover sheets that they use for scanning, which is a totally other different thing. There's just no uniform. And here's the lesson that I learned, because I like things to work out logically. I like this and this to equal this. And this business has taught me to let that go, because logic does not always prevail in this industry. Why somebody would have to initial the page they just signed?
Yeah.
Makes no sense at all, but that's the way they want it. So we can't get up and do an argument in a courtroom to argue that case. That's not our role. Our role is, just like Laura said, to make sure it gets executed properly. And if you can take a breath and release some of that, your life in this business will go a lot easier.
And one last thought on that is that it keeps it lively for sure. And it means that I can't ever be an autopilot. Just because I've handled the DOT a million times doesn't mean this one will be the same as the last one. And the same thing with documents that I will see in the same 5 or 6 that I see all the time, particularly ones I notarize. They're different. Sometimes it's an acknowledgement. Sometimes it's a jurat. Sometimes it isn't notarized at all. The whole version is different. And so what makes me feel good about the work that I do is that when I sit down with a package, it's as if I've never done it before. I've never seen this before. And I start at the top, I go down to the bottom. And then when I QA documents, I go from the bottom and I go back up to the top. And that's what's helped me minimize any exceptions in my work over the course of time.
That is such a great point, because one of the biggest mistakes that agents make, and I call it the 50 signing princess, they hit 50 signings and then you think you've seen it all.
Right.
You don't need training. You don't need mentors anymore. You've got this. But the thing is, there are people like you and I who have done this for years, and we still, I teach people to quadruple check their documents. I mean, I'm that OCD about it. Like, missing something is devastating to me internally. So I go through it, and here's the thing, like every lender, even lenders themselves, the same lender, the same type of loan, they sometimes have two systems. Maybe they're in the middle of an integration or something. So some documents will require the notary, some will not. Some will have initials and some will not. Like I've done one at 10 a.m. for one lender, and the same lender I did one at 4 p.m. and it looks like an entirely different package. So you have to really just stay on your A game for that.
One of the things I want to bring up, because it's something that's very important to me, and I teach my students this. We all get instructions. I tell them, these aren't just things you just sort of breeze through. Even though you get the same documents from the same lender over and over again, you need to read those instructions, because every once in a while there's something buried in there. And if you think you know what's in those instructions, you've got a bad future, because you're liable to miss something that's in there. It's just some one little sentence that you're supposed to do. So I can't emphasize enough that people have got to read those instructions thoroughly every time. Yeah,
they'll throw a curveball at you like only use black ink. We're so used to using blue that every now and then you'll see that pop up. So great point. I see a great question here I want to address here. How do you verify identity for a name with senior suffix but no identification with senior on it? Senior's an interesting game. So Laura, I'd love to hear your input on that.
It is interesting because a lot of times senior doesn't play until there's a junior.
Right.
And so there's the first issue why they don't have it on their license yet, is that, well, I didn't need it before. In terms of identifying, and of course, identification is 50 states, 50 laws. And some are very specific, like California, and some are, look, if it's good enough to cash a big check, that'll do it. And so it depends on what state you're in. Ultimately, what is it taking for you to be confident that it's the same guy that's presenting the document? And in my case, when I see name variation, when I have the right card per the law, but the name doesn't match exactly how it does to the documents, I need to see how I can reconcile that. And some ways to do that would be to ask what else is in your wallet. Do you have anything that would have that on there? Particularly if it's on the document and not on their ID that they're using. The other thing is I might call to find out what's, from my signing company, does this need to be on here? He doesn't have the ID that has it on there. If we need to go this way, I may not be able to do ID. I may have to go credible witnesses in order to make this so. Tell me, was this an accident or is this on purpose? What's the story here? So that I don't go a path that is not in alignment with what was required. And not every state has credible witness rules that work well for them. California has great ones because you can do one or two and you don't have to know the two. Other states, it's one, the notary has to know them, which is usually not the case. So it can be very, very difficult. And if you can't feel confident and you don't have a way to do it, I go back to my signing company and say, here's my situation. How do we reconcile this?
How heavily do you rely on AKA statements?
So as a notary, AKA statements do not help me. They help the lender, that's for sure, because it reconciles that. And they can sign with AKAs. I don't have any issue with that. But of course, I can't notarize an AKA unless I have something to support the AKA. I can't put it in the certificate. They can sign it that way.
But let me ask you a question. In your certificate, as long as you put the name without the senior in your certificates.
Oh, yeah. I could do that. The problem is if what I put in the certificate doesn't match what the signature line is, there's going to be a rejection.
Yep.
Especially if it's a recordable document. So I have to reconcile it. I can't leave it like that. Either I'm going to put the senior because I believe him and he's provided me other things that help me understand that it's this guy, or I'm going to say, no, I just am not there with you. And I'm going to call my signing company and say, look, I've got an identity issue. Here's the problem. He can't really sufficiently prove to me. This is my job to verify it's your client and I can't do it. How do I fix that? It would never be the right thing to do to put a name that's different in the certificate than it is on the document. Our goal is always what's in the document. That's what I want to match.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the other addition I would make is document, document, document in your journal. That's what it's for. Make a note of all of that in your journal. Awesome.
Having said that, I want to just add something
Sure.
that I've been telling my students to do, just for consistency purpose. When they do the oath and affirmation, which everybody should do always, put a little. If you don't want to write it out, that you perform the oath, put a little O somewhere on every single signing where you do the oath. If you're ever called to court and they ask you if you administered an oath or an affirmation, you have that consistency. The journal will back you up.
Yeah.
And Carol, can I just piggyback on what you said? Not just the oath and affirmation, but what you observed and anything that was out of the ordinary, and if you accepted other ID to help you get to the right place with the name, what were those? I'm going to tell you, I've personally been called to court on my own journal. I've been called by 2 different attorneys, and I've testified as an expert witness in California in my county because the notary did not document anything except the minimum required in the journal. And so she had no proof about what she did. And actually the problem was the people claimed 3 years later they didn't understand English. They didn't speak English. They seemed to at the time, but now all of a sudden they don't. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you go back and figure out what happened? And it would have helped the notary tremendously, and they would not have needed my help had she just taken a moment in her additional information or notes to indicate what took place during that signing. And so we
both tell people that's your memory. That's your memory. There it is. Yeah. Proof everything.
Yeah, it's more like a notary diary, guys. It's like, dear diary, this person did this or doesn't have this, that kind of thing. Just not the state minimum requirements. It's designed for you to document all of that stuff. There's one question that just came through I'd really like to talk about too, because we're getting a good conversation about that in our private Facebook group, is which address to use for your business. Does it make sense to use your home address, or would you recommend getting like a UPS store or a post office box?
Well, I have transitioned over the years. When I opened business, I did not want to disclose my personal address. I did not want people coming to my front door knocking for notary service. I'm a traveling notary, first of all. There's no need for them to come there. So I had a P.O. box at the post office, and that's what I did for many years, probably 10 years, first 10 years. And what I realized as time went on is that there were some downsides to that. And when I added a little bit to the cost of the post office and went to an office where I actually had a physical address where I could have my mail come, my checks come, my packages come in safety, number one. Number two, it changed the ratings on my business in terms of Google ratings, that I had a physical building to go to. 3, sometimes people didn't want me to come to their home. They asked, can we meet at Starbucks, which was my favorite office at the time. Mm-hmm. Now I had a place, a third place where I could say, okay, if you don't want me to do this loan package at your home, I'm happy to meet you at my office. We can do that there. And of course, there are people working there. So if I ever need witnesses, I had them built in. So ultimately, through this transition, having a physical address has been most helpful. I would not disclose in my advertising my personal address unless I plan to have an office and have people come in to knock on the door. Because people come to my shipping address and they show up in the parking lot. And they say, here, I'm at your office. It's 9:00 at night. Where are you? And so can you imagine if it was my home address?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good, great point. And the other point I want to make, so I started out with my home address. I kind of did it the opposite. I started out with my home address, and I just recently changed to it's a UPS store, but it looks like a suite. But there is, while that has some perks and benefits, obviously some privacy to it, the downside is exactly what Laura talks about, even with these UPS stores, is with the Google rankings. Sometimes that can have a negative impact on you. So not that if you try to worry about everything at the same time in this business, it gets really overwhelming. So you have to do what's right for you at the time, and you can evolve and change anytime you want. Carol, any insight on that?
I always use my home address. Not ever once in all the years I did signings did I ever have a problem with it.
Perfect. Look at that, 3 different perspectives.
Yeah.
All right. Do people lease or get a car loan when investing in a reliable vehicle? I ask because I have put so many miles on my 2017. It's 25,000 miles in approximately 15 months. I get asked this question a lot, guys, and people ask me all the time, how come you just don't lease? Well, I don't lease because in 2 months I would have hit the maximum mileage.
Exactly.
When I'm hustling, I'm doing 6,000 miles a month, and they usually cap that out at 12,000 miles a year for a lease. So that doesn't make sense. I have to either buy a car outright for cash, or if I feel like financing, I can finance one. But I do go through vehicles relatively quick because of that. So I don't like to buy brand new, of course. You just want to buy something that's reliable, of course, and good on gas mileage. That's affordable for you. Laura, what have you experienced?
I'm in agreement with you 100%. It's the mileage that killed me. I have my 2010, I put 250,000 miles on it and then sold it, got a 2017 and they're Priuses. Nice. And now in 15 months, I have 35,000 miles. I just run it into the ground. I will say probably the more important question is the reliable vehicle.
Yep.
Then whether you lease or you buy. I think buying because of the mileage. But what's really important is make sure the vehicle you choose is going to support you in your business, meaning, take in consideration operating expenses while you own it. Servicing cost, mileage, insurance, all of those are factors in managing the cost of that particular tool that we have. And so you want to make sure that it is one that isn't too expensive to run and that it is going to run, as long as you need it. You can't take an assignment and then you get in the car and it doesn't start.
That's a huge factor. And it's not, I struggled with this because the cars that fit the bill are not always the really fun ones to drive. It's the 4-cylinder hybrids and things like that. But I mean, they do the trick and they're worth every penny when you consider how much mileage you do. Carol, what about you? What have you experienced?
Well, Bill and I are old. We don't go very many places. We're actually leasing the cars first time in our lives. So I love leasing. But in my business, we never would have been able to do it. Oh my gosh, we put so many miles on the cars. And you're right, you've got to just do your homework and pick something that's going to be good on mileage and it's going to be reliable and you're not going to have many, problems on it. But now it's just, whoa!
Awesome. Great question. Guys, that's actually the end of the questions that have been submitted. So I really appreciate you guys. If you want to continue submitting those, of course, just send them to orders@notarycoach.com and we'll get them added. And before we wrap up today, and thank Laura and Carol for joining us. Carol, I know you've got something that's really close to your heart that is impacting so many people in the state of California right now. Would you like to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I really don't. We have such a happy group here, and I think people appreciate what we're doing, and we love doing it. But especially Laura and I really are close. We have some really tragic things going on here, and one of the worst is something I've lived most of my life, 75 years in this state, and it's just horrible. There is a town about 100 miles from here called Paradise, and a fire swept through there about a week and a half ago, and people had no warning. They jumped in their cars with whatever they had on their back, tried to grab their pets. A lot of them couldn't get their pets. They got into their cars. The highway that was able to get them out of town was full of fire, and a lot of those people perished in their cars. They're just now really finding bodies. They've got so far, I think 73 or 78 as of yesterday, with almost 1,000 people missing. Two things I wanted to say for whatever it's worth. I complain. My family knows little things, the internet went out. What am I, I'm real pretty loud about it. But I got to thinking the other night about what they're going through And it's so important that each and every one of us feel and appreciate how blessed we are to be able to get into our warm beds at night, to sleep with the person that we love if you have one, to be able to go to your refrigerator and get what you want out of it, to watch the programs on television, to be with your family, to play with your dog. These people, I'm reading stories about them. They're in these weird shelters and evacuation centers. There's no room for people, so they're crowded on top of each other. They're sleeping on blankets on the floor and cots, and they have no control over their lives, and they've lost everything. And so I just think it's really, really important that we really understand how grateful we should be for everything that we have in our lives. And I'm going to make a real point of thinking about this every day in my life. One other thing, I did post something on Facebook, which is broken this morning. I don't know why, I can't get into it, but I put a group on called Safe and Looking, because I know that millions of Americans are going to Facebook for things. I did write to the news station, the local news station here, and I'm hoping that they'll post this, because if it's not for right now, I'm hoping that even in the future, it's very difficult to find people. I saw a story of one man who found his parents simply by showing a photograph around to the firemen and to the police, and they said, oh, they saw this person in a shelter, and they guided him there, and there was his parents, alive and well. We need to have a place other than here. It's the Butte County Coroner's Office to look for people. So I put this thing out, and I want to spread the word. It's called Safe and Looking. It's just a group on Facebook. Doesn't cost anything. Everybody can join. And I think that in the future, at least, if people are looking for someone, they can post their picture. They can say their names, where they were last seen. Missing children. I mean, we've got to have more than just one or two places where people can go and look for their loved ones. And if people are safe, they walked out without phones, without anything. You got to understand this. They were burning up in their cars. And this is a place where if they're safe, they can somehow get the word out to post, I'm safe, I'm here, for all their loved ones. We have somebody I'm very dear to. Her name is Chrissy. Used to be Chrissy Ladd, if anybody knows her. But she's a very good friend of mine, a great notary. And she was missing 3 people in her family. Laura, I don't know if you knew this or not, but she was missing 3 people that lived in Paradise. And it was an agonizing 3 days until they were able to find them and find them alive. And so I don't want anybody's day to be down, but just remember to be grateful for every single thing that we have, just the little things that we don't think about doing. And everybody have a wonderful day. And
all right. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for doing that. Then thank you for taking some initiative and taking some action on how we can help. If you go to Carol's Facebook page, there will be a link to the Safe and Looking group, and you can help spread the word on that one.
And just search it for groups.
Thank you. I just searched for groups, Carol, just so you know it's not popping up. So
it's too new. That's probably why. Okay.
Go to Carol's Facebook page and track that down. Guys, thank you so much for spending your Tuesday morning with us. Laura, you've been awesome. You're going to make an awesome addition to this. Thank you for sharing your expertise, Carol. Likewise, same as usual. I love that we're doing this. Thank you all for growing yourself and your business on the Tuesday morning. Have a great day.
And Laura's permanent.
Yeah, Laura's permanent. She'll be back every week. All right, see you later.
Bye-bye, everybody.